You're welcome, our dear student, in this new episode from your program Madrasa al Hawa to explain the last lesson of your curriculum of science for Prep 1. Today we're going to complete the last lesson, which talks about adaptation. We talked today about second adaptation and nature of food. We talked about adaptation and movement. Today we're going to talk about number 2, adaptation and nature of food. As you see, my dear student, adaptation and food diversity in birds. Number 1, or number A. Birds feed on meat. They are called predators, as hawks and vultures. They have strong crooked beaks. Why? Give reason. Predators, birds or hawks and vultures have strong crooked beaks. The answer is to tear prey's flesh. And they have 4 fingers ending in strong and sharp claws. حوافر أظافر قوية جدا حادة جدا. 3 interior and 1 posterior. Can be bent, so it's called bendable. The posterior one is bendable. The posterior claw, the posterior finger is bendable, can be bent, okay? To control bouncing the prey, to can catch the prey. As you see, my dear student, they have strong, sharp, crooked beaks to tear the flesh of their prey, and they have fingers, 4 fingers that end with sharp claws. Why? Give reason. To catch, catch the prey. B. Birds which feed on worms and snails in shallow water, as heron and hoop. زي كده أبو القردين. They live in shallow water, not deep water, as farm, okay, farm which is covered with water. So heron and hoop can pick up worms from this farm, so they have long, thin beaks. They need the thin and long beaks. Why? Give reason. To pick up worms and snails, as you see. Okay, and also their legs must be thin and long. Why? To move in this shallow water, to walk in shallow water. They have thin legs ending with thin fingers to walk in shallow water, to remove the water resistance. C. We talked about birds that are predators, that feed on meat. Number 2, birds that feed in shallow water. Number 3, or C, birds feed on mosses and fish, as ducks and geese. All of us knows what's meant by duck and geese. Geese is the plural of goose, okay, this bird. They have wide indented beaks in the 2 sides. Why their beaks are wide? 2, because they eat fish, small fishes. They eat mosses, okay, from this water, from lakes, okay, from small and narrow channels. So they need what? They need wide beaks. Why? Why they need wide intended beaks? To help them filter the food from water. Sometimes, my dear students, you see them move their beaks on the 2 sides. Why? To filter the food from water. And what about their legs? Their legs end with wide part. Their fingers are connected with something is called palm. They have palm legs. Why they have palm legs? To swim, to help them in swimming. And number 2, adaptation. We talked about adaptation in birds. Number 2, adaptation in insectivorous plants. What's meant by insectivorous plants? They are self-feeding green plants, as any green plant, autotrophic. Autotrophic means self-feeding, producer. Producer, what is meant by producer? They can make their own food, starch, just starch. But they can't make protein. But these plants need protein. But they can't make protein. Give reason, because they can't absorb nitrogen. If any plant needs to make protein, it needs two factors. Number one, starch. Number two, nitrogen. They can make starch during photosynthesis process, but they can't absorb nitrogen to react with starch to form a protein. So what can they do? They can bring nitrogen or bring protein delivery. If any mother can't make food, she can ask any restaurant to send this food delivery. So these plants need to get protein, but they can't make protein. But what can they do? They can bring protein delivery. From what? From insects. Just from insects. They can open, and they have sensor, and when they feel that there is an insect inside it, it close quickly and capture this insect and secrete some liquids to help it to digest this insect, to get protein. So they are self-feeding green plants that their root can't absorb the nitrogen or nitrogenous substances, as you see on the monitor please, from the soil needed to make protein. They are called insectivorous. So some question give reason insectivorous, or some plants are called insectivorous because they devour what? Devour the insects. Give reason some plants devour insects. Give reason to get their needed protein. Why? Because they can't make protein. Examples, as you see, my dear student. Number one, Diania. It can open and close. Number two, Drosera. Number three, Halophila. Examples for insectivorous plants: Diania, Drosera, and Halophila. Reasons for this type of modification, this type of adaptation: to bounce and digest the insects. Not all plants have this ability, but just insectivorous. Give reason: to bounce and digest the insects, then absorb the nitrogenous substances that the plant's bodies need. Why? To get protein. This type of adaptation is structural adaptation. You have to remember, my dear student, types of adaptation: structure, biological, and behavior. Third, adaptation and environment. What is the relation between adaptation and the environment? Every environment has some type of adaptation. The plants or animals which live in this type of environment must have some types of adaptation or not. What is the influence, what is the effect of the environment for plants and animals to make some type of adaptation? So, some forms of adaptation in living organisms with the environmental changes. Number one, hibernation. Two, estivation. Three, birds migration. Number four, camouflage. Again, hibernation, it is related to the type of environment. Estivation, birds. Okay, we have a phone. Asma. Hello.
Hello.
Hello أسماء.
Hello.
تفضلي يا أسماء.
Why? Why is
Why what?
Why is produces planets?
Again أسماء please, and raise your voice. Why?
Produces planets.
Producing what?
Planets.
What? Producing what أسماء?
Planets.
Planets. Why producing plants? What's the question?
What the produces planets? What is the produces planets?
What? The producing?
Produces.
Excuse me, I can't hear. Please raise your voice.
Produces planets.
Produced. Oh, we missed it. We need to explain what do you mean أسماء what the produced plants نباتات منتجة. Okay. We're sorry for cutting this. We missed it unwillingly. Hibernation, starvation, birds, migration, and camouflage. Number one, hibernation. What's meant by hibernation? Hibernation, it is the behavior through which some animals try to dormancy and stop most of their vital activities to avoid the low temperature in winter. So, the relation here between hibernation and winter. Some living organisms, some animals which live in some environment, in winter they need to stop all vital processes or appearance of life. Why? Because or to avoid the low temperature. They can't bear the low temperature. They can't eat in low temperature. So it's called hibernation. Again, hibernation, it is behavior. So it is behavioral adaptation. Its type is behavioral adaptation. It is the behavior through which some animals try to dormancy and stop most of their vital activities to avoid the low temperature in winter. As what? Number one, as some reptiles, as you see, and frog. Frogs is a very it's a very famous example for this type of adaptation, hibernation. Features of adaptation. This type, hibernation. Hiding some animals in burrows during winter. Some animals bury themselves in mud, في الطين. Stop feeding, don't eat, and their activities decrease in winter. Reasons for adaptation. What are reasons for this type? What are reasons for hibernation? To overcome, للتغلب على the decrease in temperature, because they can't bear the low in temperature. But in spring, when the environmental condition become favorable, become well, these organisms return back again to their normal activities. And we can see frogs and these reptiles in summer, not in winter. Types of adaptation, its type of adaptation is behavioral adaptation. So hibernation is a type of behavioral adaptation. Number two, the opposite, starvation. Starvation is the opposite of what? Hibernation. In hibernation, animals sleep all winter. But in starvation, the animals sleep in all summer because they can't bear the hotness. They can't bear the high temperature. Especially some animals which live in desert. So starvation, it is a behavior through which some animals try dormancy and stop most of their vital activities to avoid the extreme rise in temperature in summer and shortage of water and rains. As you see on the monitor, please, again, starvation, it is the behavior through which some animals try dormancy and stop most of their vital activities to avoid extreme rise in temperature in summer and shortage of water and rains, especially the animals which live in desert. As gerbil, first one is called gerbil, desert snail, and some insects. They undergo starvation. Feature of this type, features of starvation, adaptation. In summer, some living organisms become dormant and hide in humid burrows. Reasons for adaptation: to overcome extreme rise in temperature. They can't bear the high temperature in summer. To overcome shortage of water and rains, especially in desert areas, as we said. 3. Birds migration. So the adaptation that is related to environment: number 1, hibernation in winter; 2, starvation in summer; 3, birds migration. Some birds, not all birds. Birds migration, it is inherited behavior, سلوك متوارث in some species, not all species, of birds, where they migrate. What's meant by migration here? To leave their country, to leave their home, and move to another home or another country or another region, another area, where they migrate from cold and polar regions to more lighted here, that it means it has sunlight, so it's warmer, and warmer regions for reproduction. Some birds migrate for reproduction. Reproduction means to give new birth. They lay eggs. Sorry. Some species of birds are adapted to the environmental conditions by migration. They migrate to the same places at the same time every year, inherited. No one taught them, no bird taught them, but this behavior is inherited. They migrate from their places to the same place in the same period of year to what? To reproduce, to do reproduction process. Example of birds migration: quail bird, طائر السمان. Feature of birds migration: in winter, some species of birds migrate from cold and polar region. What are the reason? Reason for or reason of adaptation: to search for more lighted and warmer regions for reproduction. But in spring, when the climatic conditions become favorable, become well, these birds return back again to their home, to original habitats. And this type of adaptation is behavioral adaptation. Number 4, camouflage. Camouflage, it is the ability of some living organism to be hidden from their enemies or to capture. 2 reasons here. Number 1, to hide from enemies. Number 2, to capture the prey. In the predatory species, only camouflage is known in the predatory species. So some of them hide from the predator, some of them hide to catch the prey. Examples: leaf insect. As you see, my dear student, you can notice easily that this leaf insect, just like the leaf. Can you differentiate between the leaf and this insect? They are similar, so no one can recognize it. The predator can't see it. And number 2, leaf insect. Stick insect. Stick insect. It's like a stick, like part of a tree, small part of a tree. But sure, it is insect. Okay. Camel is desert sheep. This is the last point today. Camel is considered one of most adapted animals to live in desert. The camel is the animal which can appear all types of adaptation. It has a structural adaptation. It has its legs are modified into pad, which has broad, flat layer to protect it from diving and to can bear the high temperature in desert. It has not only structure but behavior, and it has functional adaptation. So camel collect all types of adaptation. Camel is considered one of the most adapted animals to live in desert. It is an example for all kinds. It's very good question, my dear student, and you can see it in the type of, write the scientific term. The animal which is an example of all kinds of adaptation. What? It's camel. That help it live in the hard conditions of desert. It can bear the high temperature. It can move for long times and long distances without need to any water, because it can drink 100 liters of water in just few minutes. Okay, it can't sweat until its temperature reaches 40 degree. It has frosted lips. It has thin membrane on its eyes. It can bear a lot of bad conditions of desert. So we like camels. It is called the desert sheep. Now, my dear student, let's start our final revision from this moment. Write the scientific term. Number one, it is the ability to do or to make a change. Ability to do work or to make a change. Yes, it is energy. Number two, the smallest building unit of matter which can exist freely. Molecule. But if he asked me about the smallest building unit of matter which can't exist freely, it is atom. Atom can't be existed freely, while molecule can exist freely. Number three, the number of protons inside the nucleus, number of protons only. It's called atomic number, because by knowing the number of protons, I can tell you what is its type of atom, what is the type of element. For the ability of some animals to change their color to stimulate the environment. Ability of some animals to change their color to stimulate the environment. Camouflage. Yes, camouflage. As frog, chameleon, leaf insect, and stick insect. The basic classification unit of the living organism. Basic classification unit of the living organism is species. Species. Number six. Species has two terms. Number one, basic classification unit, and another term, a group of animals which are most similar. Number six, the sum of potential energy and kinetic energy. We have, my dear student, two examples for write the scientific term. Contains the sum. Number one, sum of number of protons and number of neutrons. It's called mass number. And this type, the sum of potential and the kinetic. What's potential and the kinetic energy? It's called mechanical energy. Number seven, the space among molecules. Space among molecules. From this sentence, space among molecules, it's called intermolecular spaces. Intermolecular space. Number eight, gases that their molecules are composed of one atom only. Gases that their molecules are composed of one atom only. It's noble gases. Noble gases. Change of matter from solid state into liquid state. Change of matter from solid state into liquid state. It's melting. Melting. Okay, my dear student, this is the last question for today, and keep in touch with us to revise with us to explain what are the types of question next week. And now I have to say goodbye.